All right. Well, hi, everyone. I am so happy to be here with you today to talk about advancing your career during what is definitely a tough time. And obviously, we're all dealing with unprecedented circumstances right now. And as we see work as we know it changing, this really is an opportunity for us to consider pivoting and innovating how we advance and how we develop our own careers. So my name's Sheila Boyson, and I'm a master certified executive career coach and professor, and I specialize in talent development and coaching. I have a background in enabling positive change as a leader across a number of different industries and roles. And as a master certified coach, I support individuals to find career fulfillment and really to grow as leaders. So that mission is something that is carrying forward and maybe even becoming more important as we now navigate, these challenges right now. So as I alluded to, this is actually a great time to kind of shift our perspective a little bit and think about how can we actually reinvent our career right now. So unexpected events or shocks or different things that happen along those lines can really disrupt our routines and our habits and how we go about our days. And what this ends up doing is to some extent just jolting us out of our comfort zones and leading us to ask big questions about what really matters and what is worth doing. So from that respect, it's no wonder that during challenging times or right now during a pandemic, many people are rethinking their careers. We definitely saw a shift in career philosophy take place after 9/11, as everyone started to evaluate a little bit more what's really most important to them and how do they want to balance and invest the most precious resource, or one of the most precious resources that we have, which is our time. So for many of us, this current situation has increased uncertainty. And for many of us, that's caught us a little bit unprepared, right? And that's from the perspective of psychologically, financially, infrastructurally, in many ways. And that can feel really threatening. So as lots of studies and even psychologists that have begun to explore this right now have shown, threatening situations prompt us to behave more conservatively. That's some extent just human nature. So the opposite of what's required when we're considering a career change or really looking to embrace some type of career advancement. And it's hard to dive wholeheartedly into reinventing ourselves or reinventing our careers if we're feeling that very natural level of being risk averse, or if we're really focused on being worried about, the prospects and what exists out there. So how do we balance that pressing need to ensure, one, basic survival, right? Our families, our careers, with what might be for many of us just a growing urge to want to have some type of development, to have some type of, new or different career path as this crisis starts to subside. So I've been studying career change for the past 2 decades, and a period that's really spanned, a number of major changes and events. So we saw the financial crisis happen. We saw the subsequent extended bull market run, and now the pandemic that somewhat, started to threaten that. And that experience has definitely taught me that a few simple principles can help those living through challenging times like this continue to focus on reinventing their careers. So the first tip is to develop as many possible selves as you can. So what does that mean? When you don't know what the future will bring, or when the path you thought you were on ends up taking that unexpected turn, it really does make sense to pursue a diverse portfolio of options rather than sticking single-mindedly to just one. So even in happier times, career change is never a perfectly linear process or a perfectly straight line. It's a messy journey that involves a lot of exploration. And really, to do that right, you have to experiment with, you have to test, and you have to learn about a range of your own possible selves. And possible selves, when we think about that, what that really means is looking at your passions, looking at things that really excite you, um, and really starting to come up with some concrete and well-informed ideas that are grounded in your experience. So to cover all of the ground you'll need to cover, what you want to do is let yourself imagine a diverse set of these possible selves and futures. So embrace the process and explore as many of them as you can. Reach out to others, talk to individuals who are in positions, in companies, or doing things that you would like to explore and potentially do yourself. This next one really, really resonates with me. So embrace the liminal period. So one of the, let's say, hallmarks of career change or a career change process is that emotional experience of what's called liminality. So in other words, kind of existing between a past that's clearly gone and a future that still feels really uncertain. So that liminality can be unpleasant. It's just an unpleasant state that we have to inhabit emotionally to a big extent. And people going through it really end up feeling this sense of, well, how I've heard people describe it and how I've experienced it myself would almost be unmoored or just untethered. So we almost feel like we're losing our bearings, and we oscillate between wanting to hold on to what we know and knowing that we need to let go. But that stage is one of the necessary parts of a journey of transition, because it allows you to process a lot of those complex emotions and some of those conflicting ideas and conflicting desires. And ultimately, it prevents you from shutting down and prematurely missing better options that still lay ahead. Because that's the other option. We could always take the easy way out and just stay exactly where we are and choose not to grow. But for most of us, eventually, that pull is going to become so great that we're going to be willing to push through the discomfort in order to move towards what it is we really want. So this current crisis is likely going to prolong this in-between state for many of us. So that's worth just putting out there and kind of naming that. And while frustrating at times, the state of liminality really has some benefits. So a lot of different kind of neurological studies will suggest that taking advantage of that time to do some of what you might call that inner work or that inner business may be more beneficial than engaging in what a lot of us tend to do, maybe a coping mechanism, that flurry of kind of busy making self-improvement efforts. So downtime, just taking that time for self-reflection and examination is really crucial, not only for replenishing kind of how our brain stores things and attention and motivation, but also for sustaining that cognitive process that allows us to fully develop our own thoughts and ideas and our goals. So that is tremendously important. And then next on here, I'm talking a little bit about the doing, which is go ahead and get going on some projects. So the most common path to career reinvention involves doing something new, learning something new. We talk about how this is becoming such a gig economy and everyone has their side hustle, right? But what is it that you're doing outside of your norm, outside of what you kind of do day to day, that's helping you to expand your options? So cultivating knowledge or learning new skills. We're going to start to hear more and more about this in the news, in the media, and in the job market, about how can we reskill and how can we upskill? What are your resources? What are the relationships you can tap into as you're starting to kind of think about a networking strategy to learn and grow? So maybe it's just on nights and weekends when you're taking a part-time course, or maybe you're doing some type of pro bono advisory work or developing some startup ideas. that activity is crucial. It helps you work through not only those practical questions, but also some of those existential questions that really drive a move or a change. Who do I really want to become? Where can I best contribute? What do I think will be the most fulfilling? And we end up learning who we really want to become by kind of going through that test and learn process. Nevertheless, under these present circumstances, many people find it a lot easier than before to kind of reallocate time and resources and kind of work on some of those back burner, projects that we've been working on. So although this is terribly disruptive and not necessarily what anybody would be wishing for, there's an opportunity to kind of find that silver lining and think about, how can I embrace this as an opportunity to grow and develop? And then talk about, working some of your dormant ties. So I once heard a quote that networking is considered a contact sport. And that really, really is true when you think about it. So it makes it really hard to play that sport when we're in the middle of lockdown or a world of social distancing. And I think a big question that I get often is, how can we go about continuing our networking even in this virtual environment? So what we want to be thinking about is kind of that golden rule of networking, which has historically been to mobilize your weaker ties. So when I say weaker ties in the context of networking, that's those relationships that you have with people that don't know you quite as well, or that you don't see very often. So in order to maximize your chances of learning things that you don't know already. The challenge with friends, family, and close coworkers, which would be what we consider to be your stronger ties, is that they know the same things you know. A lot of times they know the same people that you know. And they're going to want to help you, of course, but they're unlikely to be able to help you think creatively about your future. It's a little bit more likely that that could pigeonhole you a bit. So we want to expand our network when we can. But there's a catch when it comes to our weaker ties, as opposed to those stronger ties, that although these people they tend to be more likely to be a source of kind of that useful or that new refreshed information and resources, they're also going to be slightly less, let's say, motivated to help you. So especially when they themselves are stretched right now navigating everything that's going on. So for this reason, in times of uncertainty, people just naturally gravitate to rely a little bit more on their stronger ties. So what we're going to do, in the spirit of reinventing, as we're talking about, what we might want to do is, instead of just focusing on our weak ties and knowing that we want to branch out beyond our strong ties, is work on what I call our dormant ties. So when we're talking about our dormant ties, these are the relationships with people who you were once very close to, but maybe you haven't been in contact with them in the last couple of years. So they're individuals that at some point you were very close to, you worked closely with, you had more contact with. The benefit here is that they do already have experience of working with you. You do already have that connection, but you're tapping into something you haven't tapped into in a while. So this will really help you to expand your network and branch out, help to turn those dormant ties into more active relationships. And lastly, talk it out. So in the middle of the confusion that can be figuring out what you want next, how to grow, or how to make a change, many of us kind of hope that the introspection will eventually produce that kind of, light bulb moment, that big flash of light that tells us exactly what we need to know. But self-reflection, as many of us know, is a practice that is really best kind of grown or nourished through talking it out loud in different exchanges, in different social settings. So what we're looking for is someone who can empathize with us, sympathize with us, commiserate with us, ask us questions, maybe even be able to reflect back at us if they notice some of our body language when we're talking about something like, yeah, you are really excited about that. Or actually, as I hear you talking about this, you are saying you're excited, but I'm not getting that sense from you. So finding someone that you can connect with to give you that type of feedback as you're brainstorming your ideas and thinking through out loud what some potential next steps would be can be tremendously powerful. So one thing that I've kind of alluded to a little bit as I've been talking, that I want to just kind of address fully so it doesn't feel like we have kind of this elephant in the room, is the question that I'm getting very often around, okay, but with all of this remote work, with all of this social distancing, how can I advance my career? Because most of us are very used to networking or socially interacting with people face to face, and we're still navigating finding our footing when it comes to this virtual piece. So across all industries and all sectors, the pandemic has changed the nature of the work that we're doing, and just what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. So many of us are working at home. Of course, we're practicing social distancing. And whether you're waiting things out until it's safe to return to your job, or that things open up a little bit more, giving you that opportunity, or maybe you've already been working remotely for a long time, there really are a number of best practices that we can embrace as we move towards working on our own professional growth and professional development, even in the current situation. So the first thing, this I kind of categorize as make sure that your career is still going in the right direction. So a lot of people are wondering if they're going to keep their job through this crisis. There's a lot of concern. And if we take into account experts' predictions that unemployment rates will continue to be a challenge, this is a very real concern. It's also likely one that we don't have a ton of control over, which can feel unsettling. But what we can control, what we can always control, is how we respond. So the guidance here is to first do all that you can do to excel in your current job at this time. That being said, now is also a great time to give yourself a little bit of space to sit back, to reflect, and to decide if you actually are working in the job that you want long term. So I personally love the book, and it's a little bit older, but it's called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Dan Pink. And in that book, he shares that he feels there are three main ingredients coming out of all of his research that universally bring motivation and job fulfillment. And so those three things are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We're talking about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is a great time for you to reflect on those things. Does your current role allow you to feel autonomy, mastery, and purpose? And if not, what are some things you might have control over that would give you a little bit more of those things? So when I say autonomy, this is really about kind of honoring the way that you balance your time and your tasks. And then when we think about or talk about mastery, this is really, does your role, does your day-to-day allow you to do things to build skills and to focus on your strengths that help you grow in the way that you want to? Now, that being said, we all have at least elements of our job that we don't love, but the things that we have to do. So we're talking more holistically here, big picture. So thinking more majority than everything. And the last thing is purpose. Do you have a sense of belonging and a sense of impact, positive impact in what you do? So that's what I mean when kind of taking some time to reflect on, am I going in the right direction? Maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago or more, you did feel like you were going in the right direction. But if you give yourself a second to pause, maybe it's veered off a little bit. So how can we get that back on the right path? Then future forward skills. So you've heard me mention the word skills quite a bit, and this isn't going away. So a number of, books and research articles out there talk about kind of different processes, different things that support you when it comes to this whole skill piece. There's one book that I really like. It's called Peak, and it talks about the secrets from the new science of expertise. And I think the author is Robert Poole. And in that book, he shares a 5-step process that someone can use to acquire, to bring in, or to learn a new skill. So what you want to do is identify the skill that you want to get better at. Ideally, something that will help you in your job or your current job or whatever that future goal is that will come from all that reflection that you've been doing. So first, identify it. And learn some basics about it online. So do a combination of, online research, find some articles or books, maybe even take a free course in Coursera. LinkedIn Learning, which is expanding exponentially now, is another great option if that makes sense from the monthly investment that would cost you. Something worth exploring. Then next, practice it. So I know one of the things that becomes really challenging with training or courses that we take is if we just take all that material, put it on a shelf and let it gather dust. That's not going to serve us, right? We got to make sure we're living it, we're breathing it, and we're putting it into play. So practice it. Find an opportunity every single day when you can practice this new skill that you've learned. And whenever you do get this opportunity to deliberately practice that new skill, reflect on what have you learned? How have you gotten better at it? What still feels uncomfortable, if anything, to kind of continue that growth? So skills, finding ways to build on and bring in new skills. And the next is get better at being strategic. So when you're in the workplace, there are, powerful forces that are just kind of naturally built into that environment that can keep us from being strategic in terms of the bigger picture. So things even like the recency bias. I know that I personally succumb to this all the time. So the recency bias, this can lead us to end up spending time on the most recent thing that we saw and heard. So for example, where I end up getting impacted by this, I know, is my email. So when I'm looking at my email, sometimes that first thing the most recent thing that just came in and kind of hit me in the face ends up getting my attention. Even though if I pause for a second and invite myself to be more strategic about what's most important and what will have the biggest impact, that email that just came in probably isn't the most strategic thing for me to be spending my time on. So full transparency, something I personally am trying to work on. But while we're working virtually, there are still lots of different forces at play, like that email, that can get in our way, right? So as we are, learning new technology tools because we have to, maybe that's taking up some of our time to be more strategic. Maybe needing to use that new tool is slowing us down a little bit because it's new, because it's outside of what we usually use. But the idea is the more that we build in that type of capability, the faster we're going to get at it. And some of the motivation can come from, or the strategic is, as we have to learn a new tool, ask ourselves, how can I capitalize on this tool, even if it feels a little uncomfortable right now while I'm still operating in that kind of conscious incompetence? The more you do it, the more you're going to move towards that end of the scale where it's going to become unconscious competence. How can I take this new tool or this new skill and use it in other ways that are going to help me to be more productive, to be more strategic, to do a better job in a faster amount of time? And then improving our time management. Now, when we're talking about this big umbrella topic of working virtually, time management can be a struggle because we have less of those traditional boundaries we might have had when we were going into an office. We know we had to commute to get somewhere. We know we had to commute home at some point. So we had these more kind of hard start and stop times, at least psychologically, that help us to set parameters and boundaries in our day. But when we're all so accessible and we're all working from home, this can become much more challenging. So contrary to popular belief, procrastination doesn't actually come from laziness. So we can kind of set the record straight there if we think about that for a minute. It actually comes from a desire to manage our emotions. And working from home is really a great opportunity for us to experiment with ways to get better at time management. So what we might want to do is just practice different schedules, set boundaries and parameters. And what we need to do is kind of break the context of a traditional day. So where it used to be that you had to get this done between 9 and 3, maybe that's something where if you have kids at home, you need to do it after they go to bed. So again, it's allowing ourselves to kind of shake off these old restrictions and parameters of what a traditional day looked like and build a new context that will serve us more, serve us better as we're navigating a much different time, different priorities, and a different situation. And then lastly, manage your mind. So working from home gives you the chance to intentionally build that healthy, mindset. And you don't have to do this alone, which being at home, social distancing, not being able to go into the same social interactions that we're used to can feel tremendously isolating. But find someone who can be a thought partner. Maybe if you're looking to make a career change, partner with someone else who is also looking to make a career change or recently made a career change. Build a mastermind group. It doesn't even have to just be another person. Maybe there's a number of people that are like-minded or pursuing something similar. And you can form a coaching group or a mastermind group to hold each other accountable and to support each other. But really take some time to think about what will support me embracing the mindset that will help me to be productive, efficient, and successful. And when I say that, what we're talking about there really is moving more towards a growth mindset of here's what I want instead, as opposed to that scarcity mindset of thinking about, I don't want this, I don't want that, I want less of that, this isn't working. Shift to a growth mindset along the lines of, what do I want instead? What do I have control over? And how can I get there? So definitely easy to say and hard to do, but with intention and practice is absolutely something that everybody is capable of. So time flies when we're having fun. And this kind of brings me to the end of the formal presentation. But thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to share ideas and thoughts on this topic that I am tremendously passionate about. And with that, I can change it over. I'm happy to hang out. I know we have a 30-minute window here, but happy to take any questions that anyone has or anything that's kind of come up. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna have to shift views where I can see the chat. But Marie or Leslie, if there's, let me know.
The chat, hi, it's Marie. The chat is mainly people thanking you for the insights and the excellent messages. And we also had the link to the book that you spoke of that went into the chat. So all good things, really excited about the message.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sheila. This is Adrienne. It was really some great points that you made. And I think, I'll be honest, I thought, oh, career advancements, I'm here in support, right? And I'm listening, of course, right, as the part of the Stay Connected series. But I thought there are points that even though I'm not necessarily advancing my career, right, but I'm building my practice, and all of this still resonates for me too. Especially time management.
I get it. I'm right there with you. Awesome. Well, thanks, Adrienne. I appreciate that feedback. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. This has been awesome.